Welcome YouTubers. Welcome to my channel KMTrainer. My name is Michael Candolo. I'm a 20 years veteran of the information technology industry. I'm a certified Microsoft professional with various Microsoft certificates to my name. Today, I start off in this first part of a 3-part video series on MECM by showing you how to install or implement MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, formerly known as System Center Configuration Manager in my domain environment. Then I will proceed in part 2 with the configuration and administration of MECM. And in part 3, I'll talk about some troubleshooting techniques and how to resolve issues should they arise, because they will eventually. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell to be up to date as I release new videos. Methods and people may change, but the goals and the framework are fixed. With great power, they say, comes great responsibility. The SCCM engineer will be responsible for providing design, deploying, configuring, and support of desktop technologies in a distributed environment. The SCCM engineer will be responsible for software distribution and patch management, as well as building and deploying software packages to workstation and devices. As you have made up your mind to become a MECM engineer, you will have a lot of responsibilities to take care of. Now, let's talk a bit about MECM or SCCM. So for more information, you can go to Microsoft website to read more about MECM or SCCM. But what I'm giving here is just an overview. So while we're talking a bit about SCCM or MECM, let's power on our virtual servers. Why do we need System Center Configuration Manager? System Center Configuration Manager is a set of suite of products that helps to control computers, do security, updates, asset inventory, monitoring. It's a centralized management system that we can use to manage Windows and non-Windows computers. So a product like System Center Configuration Manager or MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, System Center Operations Manager for monitoring, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, System Center Data Protection Manager, System Center Orchestrator, and System Center Service Manager for ticketing purposes or incident management. Focus of MECM is mainly client users and devices, even though it helps for patching or updating of servers. With MECM, you obtain inventory and reporting in real time. With MECM, you automate the process of installing new softwares. With MECM, you automate the process of application delivery, device management, virtual desktop management. With MECM, you streamline your IT operations. With MECM, you deploy brand new bare metal computer with ease. With MECM, you perform bare metal OS deployments. With MECM, we have endpoint protection for our devices. Compliance and settings management. SCCM integrates also with SCSM, System Center Service Manager for incident management. Settings management, making sure machines work according to standards. Software update management, power management, client and health monitoring, asset intelligence, updates and servicing, in-console updates, pushing patches, deploying applications, refreshing operating systems, controlling configurations, enforcing security policies, all with complete automation without having to lock down the offices. Complete automation for Windows operating systems. MECM supports Microsoft SQL Server 2014, SQL Server 2016, 2017, and 2019. For more on the kind of SQL version it support, go to Microsoft website. Now that we know what we can do with SCCM or MECM, let's see how to implement this beast in our domain, which is the focus of this video lesson. You will hear me refer to either SCCM or MECM. So this is our DC. We have two DCs as per our previous video session on implementing domain controllers and Active Directory. And now we have the MECM server. And this is where most of the magic will happen. So we have some prerequisite, meaning before installing SCCM on a server, one should have a firm understanding of SQL Server, its prerequisite and requirements. So for more, you can go to the Microsoft website. You need to have a SQL Server in place before installing Configuration Manager on a server. So meaning, we'll install SQL Server on this KMT MECM server. So this is where we're gonna implement or install our SCCM server. So as I was saying, you need to have a SQL Server in place before installing Configuration Manager on a server. When a Configuration Manager is installed in the first system, it is known as a site system. The different functions performed by a site system are known as site system roles. The database server is such a role. So for those who want high availability for SQL Server, always best put SQL Server separate from the primary server. Meaning, if you want to have high availability in terms of SQL servers, so you won't have to install the SQL Server on this box. You have to install SQL Server on its own server. So for SQL high availability, have a primary site server on its own server, and then put a SQL Server with high availability on its own box, and then set up a failover cluster on that SQL Server. So in short, what we're saying is, so you won't have, as it is going to be in our case, you're not going to have a SQL Server on this box here. You're going to have a separate server where you're going to install the SQL Server on that separate server, and then you will have a primary site server on its own, and then on that server, on that SQL Server that you have put, you have installed a SQL Server on its own, that's when you're going to set up a failover cluster. In that case, you will have high availability in terms of SQL servers. All right. I've gone ahead of time and sysprep my MECM server, as shown in the previous video session while implementing domain controllers and Active Directory. My MECM server is now called KMT MECM. So computer name, KMT MECM for computer name. So you can either do it here, you can check it here, or you can also go via the command prompt and type hostname. All right. Now I'm gonna giving it a static IP address. Ethernet double click, properties, disable IPv6 since not in use, then click on IPv4 properties, and then let's give it the IP address as per our documentation. The IP address should be 192.168.0.5. So as you can see, it's our server KMT MECM. So it should have a static IP address of 192.168.0.5. 168.0.5. Default gateway 192.168.0.5. 1. The two DCs 1 and 2, 168.0.3 and 1 and 2, 168.0.4. All right, so my Mecm server is now ready. And if you look, I have also added 2 hard drives. So one is for SQL logs when we'll be installing SQL Server on this server, and another one is for content. We're gonna have applications, packages, OS deployment and stuff. So for those who want to see how to add a hard drive, you can just go on, click on the server, on the PC itself, or the virtual machine, VMware, virtual machine, settings, and then add disk, click add disk. We're not next, but we're not gonna add any add another drive here, so I click cancel. Or why did I add the hard drives? I did add a SQL hard drive so to release the pressure from the C drive. So I want to install application files on the C and the log file on E. Why did I add another drive for the logs, for the SQL logs, to my server? It's actually to have a balance in terms of performance, so that the data files, the database files, can be on C and the log file can be on E. But normally I should have had the database files on another drive called maybe G and the log file on E, so that it won't compete for resources with the C drive. So that's why as we are in the lab environment, that's why I've gone ahead and added the log file drive to the Mecm server. So it's just to make it as practical as possible, because normally in production environment the database file shouldn't be sitting on C. It should be sitting on its own separate file, and the log file should be also sitting on its own separate drive. I hope I made myself clear. Normally in production environment, the database file for SQL should be sitting on their own drive, and the log file should also be sitting on their own drive, so that they won't be competing for resources with the C drives where Windows is actually residing. Okay, now our Mecm server is ready. We've also given it the static IP address of 192.168.0.5. So what next now? The next step is to join this Mecm server to our Active Directory, to our domain. So we have 2 options here. We can go ahead and join the machine, or we can come into AD, Active Directory Users and Computers. As you can see, I'm on DC1, and click on Computers, and then go to New Computer, and then create that KMT Mecm computer in here, and then join it later to the domain. Or we can just come here and then right click on the PC properties, come in here, change settings, change, and then member of KMTrainer.co.za. Okay, so if you still remember how a super admin is called, Archangel. Password, welcome to the KMTrainer.co.za domain. Click OK. OK. Close. Restart later. I want to check the remote settings. Hello remote. Right. Close, close. Then let's go and restart the computer. Now let's come to our Active Directory, users and computers, while the server is restarting. Voila, we have our KMT Mecm server joined to the domain. Okay, operating system, member of. All right. Okay, let's log in now with our super admin. Click on add a user or Archangel, which is our super admin. Password. As you can see, sign in to KMTrainer. All right. That was step 1. So we've joined our ACCM server to our domain. So it's now part of our domain and part of Active Directory. Okay, it's gonna want this server manager to automatically start up on logon. So let's click manager, server manager property. Don't start server manager automatically at logon. Okay, select, click OK. So step 2, because there are some prerequisites before we install ACCM. So we need to meet all these prerequisites on the ACCM server itself. For more information, you just go to Microsoft, okay, Site and System Prerequisite for Configuration Manager. Then you go ahead and read all the information are on Microsoft website. Okay, but since we are in our lab environment, then step number 2, after joining the server to the domain, step number 2 is to add roles and features. So let's click on add roles and features. Skip this by default. Click next. KMT Mecm. Click next. What roles are we adding? So we're adding web IS, web server IS, and then we start digging inside. When you see all these checkboxes, it means that they've already been pre-installed. Okay, ALF, all right, customer logging, let's select that one. OBDC logging, select. Dynamic content compression, select. Windows authentication, basic authentication, client, web URL authorization, okay, client certificate mapping, right, centralized SL certificate support, check, management tools, IS, management service, right. Okay, then let's click next. Bits, installed, okay, HTTP activation, non-HTTP activation, right. There is a documentation on the Microsoft website related to all this that we're selecting. Click next, or restart the server if required, yes, and install. Patience is a virtue in ACCM. You need to watch and wait for things to happen while taking a cup of coffee. I repeat again, patience is a virtue in ACCM. You need to watch and wait for things to happen while taking a cup of coffee. Installation succeeded. Let's click close. Didn't ask me for a restart. Let me go ahead and restart. Okay, now step number 3. We need to come to AD and create the domain accounts that will support the installation of MECM and SQL Server. Let's open our Active Directory users and computers. Okay. So for us to install SQL Server on our Mecm server, we need to have a domain account, not a local account. Each account settings require a very specific permission, but for the purpose of configuration SCCM in our lab, I'm going with domain admin account permission. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create first an OU, a folder, version organization unit, and then I'm going to call it SCCM account or Mecm account. Okay, so now within Mecm accounts organization unit, I'm gonna create two OUs, and I'm gonna call it Mecm domain admins, and another one I'm gonna call it Mecm domain users. So in the Mecm domain admin, I'm gonna create three new users. So user 1 will be called Mecm SQL service for the installation of SQL Server. So user cannot change password never expires. First account, second account, the one that is going to support, or what I can do, let me just copy this account, I'm gonna call it Mecm SMS admin. See, the one that is going to support the installation of SCCM on the SMS. Next. Click finish. So I'm gonna make another user. I'm gonna call it Mecm network access account. For client deployment. All right. So on the Mecm domain users, I'm gonna create an account, new user called Mecm Tico reporting. That will help us in the installation of SQL Server reporting services. User can change password never expires. So let me create a group. Mecm domain admin. Okay, then I'm gonna add these members to a group. As the group name is Mecm domain admin. Okay, these are just for demonstration purposes, but in your environment, speak to your security guys or AD guys so that they can provide specific permissions. But here in the lab, we're gonna use the domain admin permission to proceed ahead with the installation of SCCM. All right, so what the next step? So we are sure that our firewall, okay, let's open server manager to double check if our firewall is on, because our firewall should be on. Okay, local server, yes, Windows firewall domain on. That's right, don't turn it off. Okay, so on this DC we gonna create a container called system management. So let's go ahead and create that container. So let's use a tool called Active Directory Services Interface Editor, ADSI edit. That's what we're gonna, that's the tool we're gonna use to create that container, because it is into that container that the information about our site will be stored once SCCM start publishing stuff. Okay, let's click Windows Administrative Tools. There we go, ADSI edit. Double click, connect to default naming context, click OK, click again, and click on the system. you need this container, otherwise you won't be able to install SCCM. New object, you don't choose account, but you choose container. Click next, and how do you call that container? You write this name, system management, no other name. Click next and finish. As you can see, it's there. So even if you come here, you can still see it. There we go. So now we have our system management container. So let's grant permission to some users in our AD. Right click on the system management container, click properties, security, add. Or are we going to add? We're going to add the MECM domain, MECM domain admin group. MECM domain admins. Not only this group, but also the computer, the server, the KMT MECM server itself. It should be having access to this full permission to this container. So let's look for it. Location, okay. Users group built-in, okay. Object types. Let's click computer. Computers. Click OK. Then let's add the server itself, KMT. Let's check, yeah, KMT MECM. That's right. Okay, click OK. Now the server, the SCCM server, should have full permission on the container. Let's click on full control. And also that domain group, MECM domain admin group. MECM domain admin group. Okay, full control. We're not yet done. Let's click on advanced. Select MECM domain admin, click edit. From here, this object only, click, select this object and all descendant objects. Click OK, and then select the server, edit this object and all descendant objects. Click OK, click apply and click OK. Apply, OK. For now there is nothing, but when we start deploying SCCM, then some information will be published to Active Directory, such as the site code. So step number 4 is to extend the Active Directory schema. Why are we extending the schema? We want to add new attributes to the Active Directory. So that's the whole purpose of extending the schema. So I've gone ahead, I copied the installation files to DC1 or otherwise what you can do, if you have the ISO of SCCM, you can mount it and pull and from there on extend Active Directory schema. SCCM setup in extend schema. Okay, double click, there we go. Extend Active Directory schema. It went quick. Let's go and check if the schema has been extended. On PC, C. Let's see what this file tells us. Open it. Then it tells us successfully extended the Active Directory schema. So we're done for now on this server. Now let's go back to our KMT Mecm server. Let's log in. So now, after we have successfully extended the schema, the Active Directory schema, the next step is to download and install the Windows Assessment Deployment Kit and Windows WinPA or Windows pre-installation environment. So I've gone ahead, downloaded these two big files into my computer. So now I'm gonna install. As we said, you have to download the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. You have to download the latest version based on the version of your configuration manager. All right, now we need to install okay, we have done a lot of steps. The next step is for us to install the Windows Assessment Toolkit. And the Windows pre-installation environment, WinPA. So I've gone ahead and downloaded these files on my Mecm server. So we have Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, which contains a set of tools that you need to customize Windows images for large-scale deployment. You can also use the tools to test the quality and performance of your system and applications running on it. Every new release of Windows ADK is better than its previous version. So let's go ahead and install Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. Use a state migration tool, very important. So you can use a state migration tool to streamline and simplify user state migration during large deployments of Windows operating systems. User state migration tool captures user accounts, user files, operating system settings and application settings, and then migrate them to the new Windows computer deployed via System Center Configuration Manager. So that's why this tool is very important. As you can see, this user state migration tool is part of Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, Windows ADK. Okay, now let's install WinPE, Windows pre-installation environment. It's just a bunch of files that you need to install. Alright, now that we have installed Windows ADK and the Windows WinPE, now it's time to open some ports into our firewall. So let's go click on Start on KMTDC1, Windows Administrative Tools, Group Policy Management, the Forest, KMTrainer.co.za, domain, right click, create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Gonna name it SCCM ports. Click OK, and then right click on SCCM ports, click edit, because the group policy is made up of computer configuration and user configuration. So you're gonna go into computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, Windows firewall with advanced security. And then here we have inbound rules and outbound rules. So on the inbound rules, right click, new rule, then port, click next, so you're gonna go with inbound TCP port. Which port are you going to specify? I have these ports here. Okay,
Right, allow the connection, fine. Next, and then name it SCCM port 1. TCP, okay, CCM TCP inbound. Okay, click finish. Go back again to inbound rules, new rule, port, next. Next, next, next. Inbound, new rule, port. So next step is to create the inbound UDP ports. So let's go to inbound rules, right click, new rule, port, next, UDP. Next, allow, right, finish. Let's go again, right click, new rule, port, UDP. Okay, then we have 10 1 2 3 outbound TCP port. So you can get more information about these ports on the Microsoft website. Ports that needed to be open for SCCM. Allow the connection. Next. SCCM outbound TCP. Okay. So now we need to create a GPO, then open file and print sharing, inbound and outbound. Create a rule for WMI, inbound only. So let's use the same GPO. Inbound rules. Right click, new rule, predefined. File and print sharing. There we go. File and print sharing. Click next. That's right. And finish. Okay, and then what? Outbound rule. New rule. Predefined. File and print sharing. Click next. Allow the connection. Finish. And then create a rule for WMI inbound only. The last one is to create a rule for Windows management instrumentation. So WMI inbound rule. New rule, predefined, Windows management instrumentation, WMI. Okay, click next. Allow the connection, finish. There we go. Now one more thing that needs to be done. We need now to go to the SCCM server itself and then open port 1433 4022 inbound and outbound TCP ports, and then we'll be done with configuring firewall. So let's go to our KMTMECM server. Inbound role, new role, port, inbound and outbound. So we need to open to create rules for inbound and outbound TCP ports 1433 and 4022. This is done on the SCCM server itself. Inbound TCP. outbound role port on the connection outbound TCP. Click finish. You can give it any name that you want, but I just want to be quick here. So that's it. So when we done now configuring our firewall ports, you can also open these ports by running PowerShell commandlets if you so desire, which is much quicker, but I wanted it to be done step by step. So now that we are done with configuring our firewall ports, the next step is to install the SQL Server on this KMT Mecm server. It's mounted. Double click setup. Because we are in a lab environment, so I'm gonna install SQL Server on the same box with Mecm. Your SQL standalone installation. Evaluation. Click next. Accept. Next. It's just a warning for Windows Firewall. Let's click next. Gonna select database engine service. Looking for reporting services, download from the web. Full text. Client tools connectivity. Click next. I'm gonna go with the default instance name. Click next. So I'm gonna go use the domain account. Mecm SQL service. Click OK. OK. Mecm SQL service. OK. OK. Password. Collation. Very important. You can see Latin General CIAS. So we should have SQL Latin, so we need to customize it. So I need to have this one, SQL Latin, general CPI CIAS. Without this SQL collation, you won't proceed with the installation of MECM. So SQL Latin 1 general CP1 CIAS. So this is the one that we have to take. Click OK. So there we go. So without this SQL collation, you won't proceed with the installation of MECM. Save as account. We are set. Click next. Add current user. That data directories. User data log directory. TB. Alright. Click next. And click install. Okay, the installation is successful. As you can see, we have green check mark all over. Succeeded. Install successful. Let's close. Restart our server and then install the SQL Server Management Studio. Let's go ahead and install SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server Management Studio is an integrated environment for managing any SQL infrastructure from SQL Server to Azure SQL database. So Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, let's click install. So we use SQL Server Management Studio to deploy, monitor, and upgrade the data tier components used by your applications and build queries and scripts. SQL Server is the building block of MECM. No SQL Server in your environment, then you can't install MECM. A SCCM engineer requires and must have a certain level of understanding of SQL Server. As you can see, SQL Server Management Studio is no longer tied to the SQL Server installation in terms of version, as it used to be in the earlier version of SQL Server such as 2008, 2012. At the time of this recording, the latest SQL version is SQL 2019. I tested the other lab with SQL Server 2017 before recording this training session, and this is what I'm using in this recording. So you're gonna go ahead, assign a sysadmin role to the SMS admin account inside SQL Server and set memory allocation on the SQL Server. After that, we'll have to restart the SQL or the Mecm server. So we'll be done with the installation of SQL Server. And then the next step will be installing our Mecm, our Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager application on this server here. Restart required in order to complete setup. Let's restart. Now let's add the Mecm server to administrator group on this machine here, on this server. Local users and groups, administrators, and then let's add this KMT Mecm server. Computers, okay, check name. KMT Mecm server must be added to the administrators group on this server here. Apply, click OK. As we said earlier on, let's launch SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, let's connect. Let's go properties. Memories. Minimum. Gonna set it to 4. And the maximum I'm gonna set it to 10. Click OK, and then security. SMS admin. No, location, the directory. SMS admin. Okay, save a role, sysadmin. Click OK. We're done now with setting up SQL Server, and then let's restart our server.
Alright, now it's time to install our primary site on this KMT Mecm. Simply meaning it's time to install our configuration manager. So we are finally ready to launch the setup. First, to reboot the server. This will make sure that the machine is not in a reboot pending state. I've already gone ahead and rebooted mine. Before launching the SCCM installation, I recommend launching the Configuration Manager Prerequisite tool in order to verify if all components are configured correctly. The SCCM setup will also run this check, but if you are missing a requirement, you'll have to go through the whole installation wizard again after fixing it. So let me go ahead and launch the Configuration Manager Prerequisite tool. This is the Configuration Manager Prerequisite tool. So let me click install. Okay, cool. So let's go now and launch the setup. Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager Setup Wizard. Click next. Install a Configuration Manager primary site. Install a Configuration Manager central administration site. Upgrade this Configuration Manager site or recover a site. Perform site maintenance or reset the site. And install this Configuration Manager site. Since we are installing a brand new Configuration Manager primary site in our environment, then you go with this default option. Click next. You can use to install the evaluation edition of this product for 180 days, but I use to have the key for the configuration manager, so that's where I inserted the key. Click next. I accept. Click next. I went ahead of time and downloaded the prerequisite files. Okay, language English. Click next. English next. Site code KMT. Site name
KMT HB Central. Hit next. We're not joining to central administration site, so we're installing the primary site as a standalone site. Select, click next. Do you want to continue? Yes. SQL Server name. The SQL Server is residing on this server, so click next. So you can see the database name will be CM KMT. That's what you're gonna see in SQL. Okay, let's check if SQL Server is running. Okay, so because server is not running, let's start. Server agent start. Server browser. Let's refresh. Okay, SQL Server is now running. Let's try again. There we go. So the SQL Server services were not running. Click next. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select this one, configure the communication method on each site system role. Client will use HTTP when they have a valid PKI certificate and HTTPS enabled site roles are available. Click next. And here we're gonna choose HTTP. Click next. Click next. We don't have a proxy server. Click next. There we go. Click next. Okay, prerequisite checking is completed. Is only the SQL memory. You can see Configuration Manager requires SQL Server to reserve a minimum of 8 GB memory for the central administration site and the primary site, and the minimum of 3 GB for the secondary site. Okay, so not much concern about this right now. And click Begin Install. So the installation is started. So let's sit back and relax. So let's open our SQL Server Management Studio. And check the creation of the Mecm database. So let's open our SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS, to check the creation of Configuration Manager database while our installation is progressing. And it's quite sure that the database has been created because we have a green check mark showing that the database, SQL Server database, has been set up. But just to double check, we opening SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, connect. Databases. There we go. This is our Configuration Manager KMT database. There we go. So we had a very successful communication between SQL Server and the Configuration Manager. The SQL database is a proof that Configuration Manager is successfully interacted with SQL Server. So let's close the SSMS or SQL Server Management Studio and return back to our Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager setup wizard and wait for the course setup to complete and close this wizard. Course setup is completed. Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager has been successfully deployed into our environment. Let's close. Close again. Let me go ahead and install the tool that will help us to read the log files. Tools, KMTrainer. Do you want to make this program default view for log files? Yes. So KMTrainer will become your best friend when reading log files for Mecm. This is the tool that is used to read the Mecm log files. Okay, close. So we have met all the prerequisites and installed Mecm properly. Let's go ahead and restart the server. Okay, let's go ahead and open the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. There we go. So let's launch it. We need to be sure that the SQL services are running. Let's go check. As we have restarted the server, so we need to make sure that the SQL Server services are running. Yes. So we should get access to our Configuration Manager console. So this is our Configuration Manager console.
So the MECM server has been restarted, and now we have our MECM console running, but it needs further configuration, which is going to be the discussion in the second part of our video training series. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and view. Until next time, take care of yourself.